Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adam Robles. Some people know me as AD. Old AD, smooth AD, reasonable Latino. You know, I'm not really as reasonable as I might appear. Not all the time, anyway. All right, well, I'm very glad to be here today. The vibes are, of course, completely impeccable, which is great to see. Tanner invited me to come to this not that long ago. I think I was a backup plan, is that right? I'm just joking. I don't normally do too many conferences, to be honest, but obviously when Tanner told me about the theme of this conference, I really wanted to come. It's a perfect theme for this year. Don't waste the win. Vibes are good, of course, since Trump's decisive victory. There's been lots of political wins, political appointments, confirmations, executive orders, firings. Things are feeling good. They're feeling like they're heading in a good direction. We're feeling good. It's all good. We've got momentum. But as John said, and there's a lot of overlap with John's speech and mine, now is the time to keep the pressure on. This is the time to make moves. This is the time to make moves with confidence. This is the perfect time to make things happen. So we should not waste the win by sitting back and waiting for things to happen. That's not how it works. The world is there for the taking, and we're the ones that have to do it. The Bible says the gates of hell cannot stand against the church. And God has work for us to do, so we're going to do it. I love it. So even though there is some overlap, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about politics. Chances are very few of us are politicians. And I'm not going to get into it very much. It's not that it's not important. It's very important. But that's not what my talk is about today. I'm not even going to really talk about theology. I always try to prepare people when I give a talk like this that this is not a sermon. Even though theology drives so much of why we do the things that we do. But that's not what this is really even about. I'm also, and this might disappoint some people, but maybe it'll make people happy, I'm not going to get into too much of the social media internet drama, although that thing can be kind of fun from time to time, and there's lots of opportunities to laugh at that kind of stuff. But the truth is, in the grand scheme of things, that kind of stuff doesn't really matter much. It doesn't really move the needle that much. I mean, it can have its place. It's important in its own way, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. But to be fair, I am going to start off with some internet drama. And I think you'll see why I do this in a minute, because I think it sets the stage for what really actually moves the needle, what's really important. I'm going to tell you a little story about a woman named Jennifer. Jennifer was known on the internet as Patriarchy Hannah. Patriarchy Hannah was the wife of a guy named Tony, who owned a small town somewhere in the South. I didn't even know you could own a town, but apparently this guy did. They had 14 kids. They all lived in the town. Some of those kids were adults. They had their own families as well. And Patriarchy Hannah, she was in support of good things like patriarchy, classic patriarchy. She obeyed her husband. She respected her husband. Her husband provided her with a very comfortable life, through hard work, through wisdom, through grit. He was very optimistic. He even provided her frivolous stuff that she just enjoyed. He liked to give his wife good gifts. They had a slushy machine at home because she liked junk food. But she was very careful, though. Even though she liked junk food, she worked very hard to maintain a trim figure for her husband. They had an ideal life in almost every way. And she was involved with a lot of people that you might know. She would get involved with podcasts and, talking about anti-woke stuff, anti-feminism stuff. She even liked me. I remember one post, I was telling some people this earlier, where she said that somebody asked her son what his favorite YouTuber was, and it was me, AD Robles. Very cool son. She used to do audio podcasts with a lot of different guys that, I'm not going to name them, but you would know their names. She talked about patriarchy, male headship. She even made a lot of friends. She would talk to women on the phone, sharing details about their lives, crying together. I'm assuming they were crying together, I had a friend once, and his mom would always say, a woman's day's not over until she's cried. Anyway, so she had a pretty incredible story too. She apparently had been trafficked at an early age and somehow found her way out of that and found a good husband and a very godly husband. It was all good stuff from my perspective. Now, I have a rule, and I'm not saying you need to have this rule, but it'll make your life a lot better if you follow it. I don't really pay much attention to women online. I never followed Patriarchy Hannah on Twitter. She would, send me messages, on Twitter, not private ones, but very kind, very encouraging about my content, and I rarely ever responded. There's like 3 women on Twitter that I follow, and none of them are well known. They're just like friends of my wife, that kind of thing. But that's my rule. I don't follow women on Twitter. And so I interact very infrequently, but I knew her story because she was everywhere. Turns out it was all fake. The entire story was fake. Jennifer was a catfish. Barely anything I just told you about Patriarchy Hannah was real. This is all a matter of record now, but initially people had to sleuth it out. And that's the thing, you can't lie on the internet. Someone's going to figure it out. And so it's all, the whole story essentially was a complete lie. She's a real person, but her life, as people knew it, was fake. Now, this led to a big controversy among women online, women of both genders. People felt betrayed. They were angry. They were on full attack mode. And they ran with this situation. Everyone was looking for something to blame it on. See, this is the problem with online anonymity. Others said this is the lie of traditional family structures, where the wife doesn't work and she obeys her husband. It's all cosplay. Nobody really does it. It's fantasy. See, Patriarchy Hannah. Others blame patriarchy itself. They said, see, men are so naive. They're easily fooled. You should have known it was a lie. So people were mad. But when I heard about this, my opinion was very different. And in all fairness, I was technically tricked too. I didn't think Patriarchy Hannah was fake. I had no reason to. But here's the thing with me. Ready? I didn't care. I didn't care to devote any energy into wondering whether this person was real or not, one way or the other. She was just a person online. Sure, I liked what she said. She said some interesting things. Her story was sort of interesting, but she was just a digits on a screen. I didn't know her. I spent no intellectual energy, I devoted no emotions to it, nothing. So when it turned out it was fake, it's like, sure, you got me, but who cares? That's why I found the angry responses so interesting. People were indignant. They wondered, how could somebody invest so much time creating this fake persona, establishing relationships, all that, and it's just all fake? And to me, when I saw the reaction, all the anger and the hurt, I had sympathy, but I almost wondered if that anger was a little bit of projection. Like, were these people just really angry with themselves? Because they are the ones that allowed themselves to get so invested in an online relationship. Sure, Patriarchy Hannah or Jennifer or whatever her name is, she lied. But the only reason the lie mattered to you at all is because you also were living your life invested in the fantasy. It reminds me of catfish victims that they're 67 and they think they're in a relationship with Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt, for some reason, needs thousands of dollars of Amazon gift cards. I have sympathy for those people, right? But I have a hard time feeling too bad for those people because it's almost like the way they tell the story, there was a transaction happening. They paid to be in a relationship with Brad Pitt, sort of. And they kind of got what they paid for. They had an online relationship with this person. At least Patriarchy Hannah never took any money. But here's the thing that I also thought when I heard about this whole thing. The woman behind the account, this, I guess her name is Jennifer, she was playing pretend, but she had envisioned this great life, right? She created this story of objectively good things. Having a good husband, having a provider, having a protector, someone who was strong, led their family in the Lord. He had a good head on his shoulders, mentally, physically, spiritually. All of those things are good. And the thing about Jennifer, I don't know her, but the thing about her is, the real person, not the fake person, she could actually have those things if she wanted to. The whole fantasy is within her grasp with just a little bit of effort. She could have it all. It didn't have to remain a fantasy. She has the skills and the ability to build real friendships. She has the ability that, if she needed to attract a husband, she could do the things necessary to attract a good husband. She could keep a traditional home. God has given her all of the skills and the attributes to do it. She could do it if she wanted to. You can just do things. That's the title for my talk today. You can just do things. See, online life is full of fantasy and bravado, and that just is what it is. It's always been that way. You can present any persona you want online. It's really not that difficult. People were wondering, how'd she have time to do this? And I'm thinking, how much time does it take to tweet? I mean, you can create anything online in seconds. It reminds me of sort of like a video game almost, right? Like a fantasy video game. You beat the villain, you build the town, you become a legend online. But it's not a real accomplishment. It's a story. It's a fantasy. It's just a dream. And so that's what I want to contrast with what we actually should be doing, right? Now is the time for real life action. We can beat the villain in real life. We can build the town in real life. We've been given tremendous opportunity in this country to get great works done, and we must not squander it. God's given us every single thing we need, and he promises to be with us while we do it. And so what I want to do today is I want to give you encouragement and advice on what I mean, and I want us all to think bigger than we've thought in the past. I think it all starts with us as individuals. You got to think about yourselves for just a little bit. Now, this message is specifically for Christians, right? And so I'm assuming Christ has saved you from your sins. You have an eternity to live with Christ and Christ's people. He's covered your sins. He's your fortress. It's all beautiful stuff that we know and we talk about all the time. But one thing we should remember is that Christ has saved us for eternity, for eternal futures, but he's also saved us to accomplish work here and now. We were saved unto good works. I think sometimes the kind of teaching that we regularly hear, it gives lip service to the good works for now, but I think we should really think about those long and hard because there's lots of works that we should do right now because we've been saved. We need to rewire our thinking a little bit. God saves you for good works now, and he expects to get a return on that investment. So you think about your own life. God has provided each of you with specific talents, specific skills, specific attributes, and it's different for each of us, right? We all have different skills, different talents. But I want you to think about not only your skills and your talents, but also your desires, your dreams, your visions. It's absolutely amazing. I'm in a pretty privileged position to think about these things because I'm a headhunter. That's what I do for a living. So I'm constantly talking to people looking for fulfilling work. I'm also talking to people who have businesses that have plans in mind and they're looking to hire people. So I hear this kind of stuff all the time. I hear about skills. I hear about motivations. I hear about dreams. And it's absolutely amazing the amount of talent that is out there with Christians, solid Christians. It's amazing. I know a guy, he's 26 years old. 26. He recently, and I'm talking like within the last week or so, he recently was able to raise from investors millions of dollars to fund his company. What his company is doing is they're building small portable nuclear reactors. And these nuclear reactors will create energy out of the atoms in the air. So it creates energy out of thin air. And he's actually doing it. It's not a pipe dream. It's funny, I Googled this company once when I first heard about it, and like the Google AI thing said, it described the company, and it said that it was a fictional company because nobody could do this. Turns out the internet doesn't think you can just do things. But he's doing it. This guy is doing it. And here's a side note. This guy was a high school dropout. He grew up on food stamps, dropped out of high school, taught himself to code. He's already built one company. And now he's thinking about this. And he's doing it. And his investors, and these are smart people, they don't throw money away. His investors believe in him enough, and they handed him $14 million to get his project off the ground. I know of another Christian guy. He's got a team of software engineers, and they created a platform for companies to generate revenue from like products when they get returned to a business or excess inventory, just making sure nothing goes to waste, but you could also increase your revenue from that. I know Christian venture capitalists. So these are wealthy people, and what they specialize in is investing in businesses that are specifically designed to improve the United States in many ways: education, law enforcement, national defense, cybersecurity, financially. And all of it is done without having a single person on the leadership team that believes that transsexuals should be normalized or they don't believe in DEI, none of that. I also know thousands of Christian engineers, salesmen, accountants, construction professionals, healthcare workers, machinists, retailers, chefs, everything, every skill set you could imagine. All of them extremely talented, all of them driven, all of them Christians. So think about your own skills. What are you good at right now? That's where you should start. What has God given you already in attributes and abilities that you can use to get things done? I've done this about myself, right? I have certain strengths and I have other weaknesses. That's where it has to start. Think about the people around you too. Who do you know? What are their skills and abilities? How can they use what they've been gifted by God to accomplish good works with you? How can you combine skills? That's another thing that we need to consider. You know, I might not be good at math. When I say might, I'm definitely not good at math. But I know people that are very good at math that can help me with accounting or whatever it is. I really believe, after talking to so many people, that God has literally given us everything we need in-house. It just takes a little getting to know people to figure it all out. And I really suggest you do this. I think it could lead to all kinds of opportunities. And the opportunities are there right now. We just don't know about them. I know of churches. There's a brother in Florida. I know of churches that have communities that are tremendously self-contained. They have their own economy, all with Christians. Whenever anyone in the church needs something done, whether it could be, putting meat in their freezer or, plumbing, or even white-collar stuff like financial advising or legal advice, all of it can be acquired within this community. It is efficient, it is beautiful, and it keeps the resources with Christians. And resources are so needed. All of the things that John was talking about in the last talk, you need resources to do all that stuff. You can just do things. And if you can't, chances are you know someone who can. I really agree with John, like this kind of more local focus, that's going to be increasingly how we move forward. We always hear about you got to love your neighbor, right? Loving your neighbor from evangelical leaders. But I don't know about you, often when I hear that, I hear it talking about an indistinct, amorphous, faceless neighbor somewhere out there. I rarely hear it with the neighbors that are literally right in front of you. Loving your neighbor by supporting unlimited immigration, that's what they're talking about. Loving your neighbor by isolating yourself and sheltering in place so you don't get the sniffles. It's a joke. It's a joke. You can actually love your real neighbor by keeping your time and your focus and your effort and your resources with your neighbors. And here's the best part. You don't need anyone's permission to do this. You don't need to wait until Russell Moore posts on he doesn't post on the ERLC, wherever he does. You don't need him to be like, oh, it's okay, that's how you can do it. No, you can just do it. But that's not all you can do. So I think like the local focus is good and important. I think it's a way forward, but I think we can think even bigger than that. And I think some of you will and are thinking bigger than this. We have the talent and the skills and the ability to start companies and grow them into big businesses that affect the world. I think some of us should do that. Not all of us, but some of us. Some of you already have done this. Some of you have businesses that work all over the country. But here's the thing, this is the time to take risks to try to grow huge businesses that can have a huge impact on the world. And God's given us all the talent. I mean, I haven't talked to all of you, but chances are there is a wealth of experience and abilities in this room. The vibes are there, the momentum is there, God has given us. It's almost like God set the table, He provided all the ingredients for us, and we can just put a great meal on that table through all the things that God has provided us. Can you imagine how different things would be right now if Amazon was run by Christians, like real Christians, with Christian principles, or Google, or Hollywood? What if Hollywood was run by Christians with real Christian men and real Christian principles? Or even McDonald's, JP Morgan, General Electric, Ford, Exxon. How different would the world be if these companies were run with integrity instead of secrecy, generosity instead of greed? What would be different if they took our serious mandate from God seriously to steward our natural resources instead of operating with complete disregard or lack of care for the future? Can you imagine the possibilities that would be available to us for kingdom work if we had those kind of resources? And here's the thing, if you guys don't realize that, our enemies definitely realize this. They knew the possibilities, and so they took risks to acquire the means to control so many businesses, because they knew if they did that, not only would they have a way into every facet of our lives, but also, if they acquired businesses, they could raise a ton of cash, and they could give that cash to their causes and their missions and meet their own goals. And here's the thing, some of the companies I just mentioned, maybe all of them, they have their own evil goals and their own evil ends. They have their own kingdom work. And they use the money that you and I give them whenever we have to fill our car up with gas, or if we need a broker to manage our retirement, or when we have tech needs, or when we purchase a vehicle. They use the money we give them to push their evil agendas forward. And they do this every day. And so I believe it's time to really recognize the potential there that our enemies recognized so long ago. This is so crucial. And we can think, well, we should have been doing this all along. Yeah, we should have been, but the second best time, as opposed to decades ago, is right now to start. We've got to take risks, and we have to open businesses, and we have to seek to completely dominate our enemies, our competitors, and take as much market share as we possibly can from them. That's part of the work we are here to do, I think. God said, be fruitful and multiply. Obviously, He was talking about creating other people, starting families, having children, children's children, all that. That's true. That's what He was talking about. But the truth is, those kids, those children, they need food, they need clothes, they need houses, they need energy, they need transportation, they need services, they need entertainment to some degree, and they need the tools to take dominion over all the earth. That work takes resources, and our God has given us resources, and it's time we use them to make some moves and take some risks. And look, I'm realistic. Now, not all of us are going to start businesses, but some of us will. But those of us who don't, we still have opportunities to use our own skills to advance the mission for those of us who do start businesses. The work may be risky, but it will be rewarding. So here's where I give you the good news and the bad news. So first, the bad news. The bad news is that the work is very hard, extremely hard. How in the world are you going to take market share from Exxon or McDonald's? The revenues of these companies, I don't know if you're interested in business or stocks or anything, but the revenues of these companies is mind-boggling. Their workforces are massive. Their infrastructure's ridiculous. So how do you do it? How do you beat them? Now, I can't give you a step-by-step guide. Obviously, that's for you to figure out. But what I can do is encourage you. The first thing you need to do if you're going to beat Exxon or Google or Amazon is to start small. And that's not really encouragement, it's just the reality. You're going to start small. Most of us are not independently wealthy already, so it's necessary that we start one step at a time. But don't be intimidated, because remember, first of all, every one of those companies, they started small. McDonald's started with one location. Amazon, Apple started in a garage. Exxon started probably with a single oil well. Start small because you have to, and it's possible. And here's the thing, too. You got to think of it in chunks, right? Like, I'm talking about the biggest companies in the world here, right? These are multi-billion-dollar organizations. But for every one of those companies that exists, there are hundreds of organizations in the millions of dollars of revenue competing with them and doing pretty well. Think about what Christians could do with an army of small and medium-sized businesses competing against these giants. God slays giants with one stone, right? He could still do that. But he could. What's to stop him from doing it with a barrage of small stones if he wanted to? And I know, like, I say millions of dollars as if that's nothing, right? But sometimes it can seem like to create a business with $1 million in revenue is impossible. I promise you, it is not. It is not impossible, and it doesn't even matter what you do. White collar, blue collar, it is very attainable to create a business that does, $1 million in revenue, let's say. If we had businesses that did that, we could compete with some of these evil companies. Let's just call it what it is, evil companies. We don't have to knock off Apple in 6 months to win significant resources and influence in 6 months. We start small. We eat one bite at a time with a mind that eventually maybe our children's children will finish the meal when the time comes. It takes hard work. It takes creativity, but you can do it. You can beat the big guys. I've had some success in this area, to be truthful. I've won deals in my headhunting against much, much larger companies with huge infrastructures, vast amounts of employees. And it wasn't even because I was cheaper. I was actually more expensive, but I was able to beat these companies. These big companies, that their size, their infrastructure, that's their strength, right? You can turn that into a weakness. Here's how I did it once with a CEO of a small but growing software company. I said, "Hey, Angelo," that was his name, Angelo. I said, "Angelo, you're the CEO of a small company with growth goals, right? Well, I'm a growing company myself, so I fully understand the grit you need. I understand the drive that you need to find in your employees. I need the same thing. Not only that, but the multi-billion-dollar company you're considering working with, they're a good company. I used to work for a company like that. But here's what they do. They prioritize servicing customers that are also large, because for them, they have a chance to make much larger deals with a larger company. And you can't blame them for it. It's nothing, that's just strategy. But if you want to be sure your jobs are getting attention, you're going to find the right people that you need to succeed, here's what I do. I only partner with a select group of companies that I align with personally, and I make sure that your jobs get the attention that they deserve. That was my pitch, essentially, in a nutshell. And I won the business. I did. I won the business. It started small. And, we were able to grow that account into about $1 million in revenue over a couple of years. And obviously, there's more that went into it than that, but that was my basic pitch. Here's the thing. Our abilities, the different skills that we have and all of that can absolutely compete against these huge organizations because of things that they don't know about. They don't know about what a Protestant work ethic is, right? They don't know about who we're really working for, right? We can compete with all of that. Here's another thing you could do. You're small. You could just try whatever you want to try. You could try new models. You can try new products. You can try new ideas. And you don't have to worry about it because you're small anyway. If you fail, try something else next week. See, the big guys don't do that kind of stuff. They don't want to take the risk. You ever seen the movie Moneyball? Moneyball. It's a movie about the baseball team, the Oakland A's. Well, they had, baseball is awesome. This is one reason I like baseball, is because it's totally unfair, right? There's no financial equity at all. There's rich teams like Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Dodgers, and then everyone else is poor. And they have to compete to win the World Series together somehow. So in this movie Moneyball, what they did was they created a new way to evaluate talent, right? And so, it used math and all kinds of stuff, and the big teams weren't using it. And they said, why don't we just, instead of focusing on batting average, just focus on on-base percentage. Who cares how they get on base? They walk, they get a hit, it's the same thing. They said, how about instead of worried about how many people, the pitcher strikes out, let's just worry about, how many walks or hits they get per inning. That way, who cares how they get out, they're out. And so what they were able to do by doing that was to see talent where the big teams, that they're interested in strikeouts and home runs and stuff like that, they weren't really caring about certain players, and so they were able to put together a really good team by just trying it a little bit of a different way. And I have to believe that one of the reasons they did that is because, out of necessity, because they were poor. But also, it's like, if it doesn't work, I'm getting fired anyway. So I got nothing to lose. They were successful just because they were small enough to think differently. Big businesses, by the way, just so you know, they often think with a hive mind. Ever notice that? Like 4 months ago, every business in the United States, big business anyway, they were telling us that diversity was their strength. Like 4 months ago. Today, they're all eliminating their diversity programs. And so why are they doing that, right? Did they all see the light magically, simultaneously? That's not why they do it. They do it because they're managing risk, and they all have a hive mind. Nobody wants to stick out as the weirdo that doesn't do what everybody's doing. So they all basically just do what everyone's doing. Why do you think your iPhone looks exactly like a Samsung? It works essentially the same way. Apple has a new feature. Your Samsung will have a new feature very soon. It's going to be the exact same feature. There are opportunities in that. We don't have to have that hive mind. We can try things a little bit differently. And if it doesn't work, you could just try something tomorrow a little bit differently. A few years ago, I positioned myself as a headhunter, as a reasonable headhunter, a reasonable Latino headhunter. And I refused to play diversity games with clients. That's how I positioned myself, right? And I won business doing that because I was different. And, not every hiring manager out there is interested in diversity as our strength nonsense. I was able to win business just by being a little bit different. Here's another story. There's another Christian guy that I know, a Presbyterian guy. And he's the CEO of a company that has a automated, efficient way for shipping boats, what are they called, container ships, when they're out at sea and they need servicing and they're not at home port. Right now, it's a nightmare to try to figure out how to get my ship serviced in Singapore when my home port is in Virginia. So he's got this automated way to do it in a very easy kind of a way, and it saves a lot of money. And if he's successful, this not only could change the world, but it gives him an in with an industry that is worldwide. I mean, every single thing we own, in some way came by boat. It's a golden opportunity for him. And all he's doing is thinking just a little bit differently about the problem. And he's just a regular guy. That's the thing about this guy. He's just he's a lay elder at a Presbyterian church. And he's not even a software engineer, this guy. He's got a software company that he started, and he's not even a software engineer. He knew a guy. He outsourced that. See, God provided us everything we need. Every single thing we need to do. He's set the table. He's given us the ingredients freely, and we can make a great meal. That's another thing I want to encourage you. Like, you don't have to be a genius to do these things. You don't need to know it all. I mean, I'm not a genius. I don't know everything. Remember that big account I told you about that I won against a $4 billion company? Well, one of the reasons why I was able to grow it is because a lot of the work there, it was not my specialty. And so I outsourced it. I outsourced the stuff that I wasn't good at. I found a Catholic guy in New Jersey, and I found a Baptist woman in Florida that were good at the things I was not good at. I brought them in, and we combined our skills, and we made that happen. God has given us everything we need to just do what we want to do. Play to your strengths, outsource your weaknesses. It's going to be hard. It's going to take effort, but we can do it. So that was the bad news. Not that bad, right? That was not bad news. Here's the good news. The good news is God approves of this kind of thing. And if he approves of it, he will be with us as we do it. I know this is another thing that I think we need to rewire our minds a little bit. So you've heard, of course, that we're supposed to consider the interests of others more important than our own. Now, that's an ironclad rule, right? It's in the book. We cannot break that. We cannot disregard it. But here's the thing. This is where we need to rewire our minds a little bit. When we start businesses and build infrastructure and build our own family's wealth, that can be 100% aligned with also serving the interests of others. Trying to make money, even if you want to make a lot of money, that does not have to have been built on a foundation of greed. You're not going to hear that kind of thing from Gospel Coalition. That's why I'm not at Gospel Coalition. Not only does making money not have to be built foundationally on your own greed, but also the best way to make money is to not have greed as your motivating factor. Serving people is a much better foundation, much better. That insight changed my life. As a headhunter, I'm kind of in sales as well, and I used to suck at sales, like really bad. I used to make some deals, but it always kind of felt like it was by accident. At least that's how it felt. But here's why I was so bad at it, right? I would pick up the phone, I'd do a cold call, I'd get a meeting or whatever, and my sales calls were all about me. It was about what I did, why I was good at it, the skills that I provided, that I charged a fee for. It was all about me and essentially my need to make a commission. Now, of course, that's part of sales. You have to tell them what you do, right? You have to explain why you're good at it. But that's not the primary focus. It can't be just all about you. When you have a company and you have skills and services to sell, the main focus has to be about the customer's needs and what they need, what their problems are. This sounds so basic, but I got this wrong for years. It has to be about servicing other people. The CEO I mentioned earlier, where I beat out the larger company, of course, I did talk about what I could do for him, but I didn't do it until I asked him about what his situation was, what his needs were, what his experience was like hiring and trying to find talent and working with other headhunters. And that's where I found my opportunity to say the clever little pitch I had. I didn't just come up with that. It was because he had told me about how he'd worked with this big company and he kind of felt like an afterthought. He wasn't getting quality candidates. And he couldn't understand it because like this $4 billion company, how is it that they can't find quality candidates? Well, that was my opening. He wasn't a priority for them, and I told him that. And so I ended up helping him hire good people. That was his immediate goal. But his larger goal was he had this software that helped pharmaceutical companies produce better quality medicine. That's his larger goal, so I helped him do that. And in turn, those pharmaceutical companies, they help people treat cancer better. It has to be about the interests of other people. If you don't focus it on the interests of other people, it's very difficult to make money consistently. God created this incredible world for us, where God's commands on what we should be doing are in perfect alignment with how the world works. Can you imagine that? I don't recommend you watch this movie, but there's a movie called The Devil's Advocate. And in The Devil's Advocate, Satan is talking to the main character, and he calls God a prankster, a trickster. He basically tells him God creates this world, and he gives us these desires, these impulses, and then he sets the rules opposed to those impulses, and he's just laughing about it. It's a trick to him. It's exactly what Satan would say, right? But that's just not true. That's the opposite of what's true. God gives us desires, and it's in perfect alignment with how the world works. The only way it becomes in opposition is when you twist the desires. So when you twist the desire to make money and to build wealth for your family, that's when it becomes in opposition to what God does. But the desire to build wealth for your family, that is in alignment with God's mission. If you serve people, which is what God wants us to do, you'll do pretty well financially. You can do well in the short term if you don't serve people well, but it won't last. We see this play out in business all the time. But we don't need to see it. I mean, it's in Proverbs. What does it say in Proverbs? The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle. He who gathers little by little will increase it. I mean, there's 100 verses that talk about this. Serve people well, you will be rewarded. It is perfectly okay to seek reward for your labor, even if you seek a lot of reward. It is okay to make money for your family, even if it's a lot of money. I don't know why, it just feels to me that this has kind of become like a forbidden no-no. If you desire to build wealth, that's like a dirty thing. But it's not. It's good to have resources. It's good to spend them on acquiring more resources. It's good to think about the future generations of your family. All those are good things. I know some people that they're not that concerned with making money, and I think you should be. I really do think you should be. Even if you're not going to start a business, I think you should be concerned and have plans and execute those plans for growing your own wealth for your family. You know why? Because that's what the Bible says a righteous man does. That proverb that I just read a second ago, here's how it starts. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. You can't spiritualize your way out of that one. That's what some people like to do. They say it's a spiritual inheritance, I don't think so. I didn't go to seminary or anything, but I like to read the Bible in a simple way. It's talking about wealth, like normal wealth. And what it's saying is it's going to flow from the wicked to the righteous. Are you telling me that the spiritual wealth is going to flow from the wicked to the righteous? It's not what it's saying. Good men should have enough money when they die to leave it not only to their children, but to their grandchildren. Are you positioned for that right now? I'm not there yet. I've got catching up to do because when I was an unbeliever living in New York City, I made a good living. But I spent 8 years spending every dollar I had plus some when I was on nothing but partying and stuff. I had no savings, no property, nothing to show for it, but probably a fatty liver, high blood pressure from partying. When I came to faith, I was in a hole, and I had to dig myself out of that hole. And so I cut expenses to the bone. I lived in a small starter home with my 4 kids. I still live there. And we're catching up on our savings and our investments. 10 years later, I'm almost back on track. I did it little by little, but we're moving in that direction. But this is great news, guys. This is great news. Your interests making money, providing for your family, building a small little outpost for the kingdom of God in your home and your property, using it for God's purposes in your life, but also externally, all of this aligns with God's interests. So he'll be with you, and he'll be with all of us. And God can fell the giants with a single stone, and we can be a part of that story. We can just do things, especially when God is with us. Amazon has 1.5 million employees. That is mind-boggling. 1.5 million people on their payroll. They've got some great services, too. Some of them are not so great, but some of them are really good. Chances are you use some of Amazon's services. They serve a lot of people very well, but they also do a lot of evil. They do. And did you know that this is, I've talked to probably, 300 people that worked at Amazon. They catechize their employees. Every single day, they catechize their employees with all kinds of, I'm sure you could imagine what they say. 1.5 billion people get catechized in evil every day by their employer. And so because of that, because they do so much evil, the company cannot last. Evil does not last. We know this from the book. Something is going to change there, or something's going to take them out. What's it going to be? I don't know. But I know that there's opportunity there, that's for sure. There's opportunity. Some Christians, businesses, they're small right now, maybe 20 million in revenue, something like that. They've got a plan that they're executing right now as we speak to take significant market share from Amazon. And by the way, these Christian companies catechize their employees too. They catechize them with truth every single day. And they got like 50 employees. That's pretty good. That's a good start. Imagine what they could do if they were able to take market share from Amazon to the point where they had 1.5 million employees. That's what they're trying to do. And why not try? We have to try. We can just do things if we want to. And who knows, maybe one of these companies that I know will be the stone that God chooses to fell the giant. He's done it before. I think we should have confidence he's going to do it again. I know a guy, this is the last story I'll tell before I wrap up. I don't know if this guy's a Christian, but I think he is. This guy is also pretty young, probably in his 20s. He's got a company. They didn't quite get 14 million in funding, but they got a significant amount. And he's building automated robot mining vehicles. His tagline is that civilization is forged from minerals. That's true. Ever think about that? Like, God put the raw materials for everything in this room in the dirt. And it was just sitting there, waiting for us to find it and develop it into a cell phone. Or some of those same minerals we use to season our food. Or to make a machine that lets you see your baby while it's still inside of your wife. All of that is done with raw materials that have been there from the beginning. God gave it to us, and he put it in the dirt. It's amazing when you think about it. And also, he gave us the minds and the ability to do all that work. It's unbelievable. We could just do things if we want to. This same guy who's doing this, he put a billboard out in front of SpaceX because he's trying to attract employees from Elon Musk's company. And the billboard says, "You can't have rocket science without rock science." That's true. That's very true. But there's a twist with that sign, which is even more incredible. This guy's building these robots, right? These automated mining robots, not only to improve efficiency in mining here on Earth, but he wants to put them on rockets and send them to the moon or like asteroids and stuff where he believes there's mineral deposits there. It's a fortune, he thinks. Maybe even some undiscovered minerals, maybe precious metals. So he's going to launch them into outer space and let them do the mining and bring it back. That's his plan. It's amazing to me how he's a kid. He just believes you can just do things if you want to. Like I said, I don't know if he's a Christian. I've only spoken to him once in a chat. I haven't been able to do business with him yet. But I do know that he's connected to the Christian guy who's building the nuclear reactors I told you about. And they're planning to work together long term, basically unlimited energy for his robot mining army. Also, his company is called Durin. You know Durin, the dwarf king from Lord of the Rings? Known for his longevity and mining expertise. So I'm thinking he's probably a Christian. But either way, he believes that he can just do things. And he's right. We can just do things, especially with God on our side, so why not try? Anyway, thanks so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the question and answer afterwards.